She sat alone in the back row, wearing a faded jacket and clutching a program with trembling hands. Just another proud mother at a military graduation. But when the SEAL Admiral walked past her seat, his eyes locked onto the tattoo on her wrist, and his face went white. What he saw made him stop the entire ceremony, because that tattoo belonged to a ghost. Hey, real quick, comment your city below. I'm always amazed by how many places these stories reach. And if you're into true stories with real emotion, make sure you're subscribed. The auditorium buzzed with the electric energy of pride and accomplishment. Rows of white folding chairs stretched across the polished floor, filled with families clutching cameras and holding bouquets. The Navy SEAL graduation ceremony at Coronado was always a spectacle, but today felt different. Today, Admiral Richard Connolly will present the tridents himself out in the last row. Pressed against the wall as if trying to disappear, sat Elena Reeves. Her jacket was military surplus, worn at the elbows, and her jeans had been mended more than once. She held the ceremony program so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. On the cover, among dozens of graduating faces, was her son, Marcus Reeves, 23 years old. The only good thing she'd ever created. She hadn't told him she was coming. Couldn't afford to, really. The bus ticket from Bakersfield had taken the last of her paycheck, and she'd have to work double shifts next week to make rent. But missing this wasn't an option. Marcus had done it. Against every odd, every statistic, every reason the world had given him to fail, he'd become a Navy SEAL. Elena touched the tattoo on her left wrist without thinking. It was old. The ink faded to a blue-gray. 6 numbers in a simple font. Nothing fancy. Most people who saw it assumed it was a date or a lucky number. They never asked, and she never told. The ceremony began with the national anthem. Elena stood with everyone else, her hand over her heart, tears already threatening. She cried so much over the years that she thought she'd run out. But watching her boy stand in formation with those other warriors, she realized she had plenty left. Admiral Connolly took the stage. He was in his 60s, silver hair and ramrod straight, with a chest full of ribbons that told stories most people couldn't imagine. His voice carried across the auditorium without a microphone. That particular command presence that came from decades of leading men into impossible situations. Today, you join a brotherhood that stretches back generations, he began. You've endured what most people can't even comprehend. You've earned the right to wear the trident. But remember this, the easy day was yesterday. Your real test begins now. Elena listened, but her eyes never left Marcus. He stood perfectly still, his face set in that neutral expression they all wore. But she knew him. She could see the slight tension in his jaw that meant he was fighting emotion. She'd seen that same expression when he was 8 years old, trying not to cry after his father left for good. The name-calling began. One by one, the new SEALs crossed the stage. Each one received their trident pin from Admiral Connolly himself, a handshake, a few quiet words. The families erupted in cheers for each graduate. Elena waited, her heart hammering. Marcus Reeves. She stood without meaning to. Her chair scraped loudly, and a few heads turned, but she didn't care. Marcus crossed that stage like he owned it. And when Admiral Connolly pinned the trident to his chest, Elena saw her son's lips move. "Thank you, sir." The Admiral smiled, shook his hand, and Marcus returned to formation. It was over in seconds. Elena sat down, wiping her eyes, feeling foolish and proud and overwhelmed all at once. The ceremony continued. More names, more tridents, more families celebrating. Elena should have been satisfied. She'd seen what she came for. But she waited until the end, hoping for just a glimpse of Marcus afterward. Just a chance to see his face up close, even if she couldn't talk to him. As the ceremony concluded, families flooded toward their graduates. The auditorium became controlled chaos, everyone trying to get photos and hugs. Elena stayed in her seat, letting the crowd thin. She'd learned long ago how to be invisible. Admiral Connolly was making his way up the center aisle. shaking hands with families, accepting thanks and congratulations. He moved with purpose, clearly heading toward the exit. Elena shifted in her seat to let him pass, her head down out of habit. He stopped. Elena didn't notice at first. She was watching Marcus across the room, surrounded by other graduates. But she felt eyes on her, that prickle of awareness that comes from being watched. She looked up. Admiral Connolly stood 3 feet away, stock still, his face drained of color. He wasn't looking at her face. He was staring at her wrists. At the tattoo. Where did you get that? His voice was barely a whisper. Elena instinctively pulled her sleeve down. It's nothing, sir. Just an old those numbers. He took a step closer. Where did you get them? People were starting to notice. A few families glanced over, curious about why the Admiral had stopped. Elena felt panic rising. She didn't want attention, didn't want questions, didn't want Marcus to see or hear, and know she couldn't afford a decent coat. I should go, she said, standing. Admiral Connolly's hand shot out, not grabbing her, but blocking her path. His eyes had gone from shock to something else. Something desperate. Please, those numbers. I need to know. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. This wasn't casual curiosity. This man was shaking. A decorated admiral with decades of combat experience was trembling because of 6 faded numbers on her wrist. Operation Red Wing, she said quietly. June 2005. The Admiral's knees actually buckled. He caught himself on the chair, his breath coming in short gasps. You're her. You're the nurse. I don't know what you're talking about, Elena said. But her voice cracked. Bagram Air Base, June 30th. You were working the night shift in the field hospital. Admiral Connolly's voice was stronger now, urgent. 4 SEALs came in from Marcus Luttrell's team. 3 were dead on arrival. 1 was barely alive. I was there. I watched you work on him for 6 hours straight. Elena felt the room spinning. She hadn't heard those words, that operation name, in 20 years. She buried it, along with everything else from that life. Petty Officer James T. Morrison, the Admiral continued. You kept him alive long enough to get him into surgery. The surgeon said it was impossible, said he should have died in the helicopter, but you wouldn't let him go. You kept working. And when he finally stabilized, you were covered in his blood, and you had his ID number written on your wrist so you wouldn't forget to check on him. Morrison didn't make it, Elena whispered. He died 3 days later, sepsis. No. Admiral Connolly shook his head, and suddenly he was smiling through tears. No, he didn't. He survived. They sent him to Germany, then Walter Reed. He retired with full honors in 2010. He's alive. Elena, James Morrison is alive, and he's been looking for you for 20 years. The auditorium seemed to tilt. Elena sat down hard, her vision tunneling. That's not possible. They told me he died. They told you wrong. There was confusion in the transfer. But he made it. And every year on June 30th, he tries to find the nurse who saved his life. The nurse who wrote his number on her wrist and wouldn't give up. He never got your name. The records were incomplete. But he's been searching. Elena couldn't breathe. 20 years. She'd carried Morrison's death like a stone in her chest for 20 years. It was the moment she broke. The moment she started the long spiral that ended with her losing her nursing license, her marriage, her home. The moment she decided she wasn't good enough to save anyone. Why did you tattoo it? The Admiral asked gently. Because I failed him, Elena said. I worked for 6 hours, and he still died. I got the tattoo so I'd never forget what happens when you're not good enough. When you don't know enough. When you can't save them. You didn't fail him. You saved him. And he wants to meet you. I can't. Elena stood again, panic overwhelming everything else. I'm not that person anymore. I lost my license. I lost everything. I'm nobody. You're the woman who saved the SEAL's life. I'm the woman whose son doesn't even know she's here today because she's too ashamed of what she's become. The words hung in the air. Admiral Connolly studied her face, and she saw understanding dawn. Marcus is your son. He can't know I'm here. Please. Eleanor's voice broke. He thinks I'm working. He thinks I have my life together. He doesn't know I take the bus everywhere or that I live in a studio apartment with 3 other women or that I work at a gas station. He's a Navy SEAL and I'm nobody. I can't ruin this for him. You're not nobody. You're his mother. And you're a hero. I'm not. Mom? Eleanor's blood froze. She turned slowly. Marcus stood 15 feet away, still in his dress uniform, his trident gleaming. His face was a mixture of shock and confusion. Marcus, I was just leaving. Elena moved toward the aisle, but Marcus closed the distance in 3 long strides. You came. His voice cracked. You said you couldn't get time off work. I lied. Elena forced a smile. Surprise? Admiral Connolly, do you know my mother? Marcus looked between them, trying to piece together what he'd just witnessed. The Admiral seemed to measure his next words carefully. Your mother saved one of my men 20 years ago. In Afghanistan. I just found out today. Marcus stared at her. You were in Afghanistan? I was a nurse. Long time ago? You never told me you served. It wasn't important. Elena was edging toward the exit, desperate to escape. This was all wrong. This wasn't how today was supposed to go. Marcus was supposed to celebrate with his SEAL brothers, not deal with his mess of a mother. Not important? Marcus's voice rose. You saved a SEAL's life, and you think that's not important? I did my job. A lot of people did a lot more. She worked on Petty Officer Morrison for 6 hours straight. Admiral Connolly interjected. The surgeon said it was a miracle she kept him alive long enough to get him into surgery. She's the reason he's alive today. Marcus looked at his mother like he'd never seen her before. Why didn't you tell me? Because I failed. Eleanor's voice came out harsh. Morrison died anyway. At least, I thought he did. Turns out I didn't even know that much. I carried his death for 20 years, and I didn't even get that right. He didn't die, Mom. You saved him. I tattooed his number on my wrist so I remember what a failure looked like. How's that for maternal inspiration? The bitterness in her voice made Marcus flinch. Admiral Connolly watched them both with the careful attention of a man who'd counseled hundreds of warriors through psychological wounds. What happened to you? Marcus asked quietly. After Afghanistan? Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. I came home broken. Started making mistakes at work. Lost my license. Your father left. The rest you know. You never told me any of this. What was I supposed to say, Marcus? Hey, son, your mom is a failure who couldn't even keep herself together long enough to stay employed? You were busy becoming something great. I wasn't going to drag you down with my damage. You think you dragged me down? Marcus's voice was incredulous. Mom, you're the reason I made it through Butt S. Every time I wanted to quit, every time I thought I couldn't take another day, I thought about you. Working 3 jobs to keep us fed. Never complaining. Never quitting. You think you're weak. You're the strongest person I know. Elena shook her head. You don't understand. I understand that you came here on a bus because you can't afford a car. I understand that jacket is older than my Navy career. I understand you didn't tell me you were coming because you thought you weren't good enough to be here. Marcus's voice broke. And I understand that you're wrong about all of it. Marcus, Petty Officer Morrison wants to meet you, Admiral Connolly said. He'll be at the reception tonight. I can arrange it. I can't go to the reception. I have to catch the bus back. When does it leave? Marcus asked. 9 tonight. Then you have time. And you're not taking the bus. I'll drive you home. You should celebrate with your team. I am celebrating. With my team and my mom. The woman who taught me what a SEAL looks like long before I ever wore the trident. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. She'd held it together for so long, through so much, but this was breaking her. I'm so proud of you. I know. That's why you came on a bus you can't afford to ride. That's why you sat in the back hoping I wouldn't see you. That's why you got that tattoo. Because you cared too much, not too little. And it's time you forgave yourself for being human. Admiral Connolly pulled out his phone. I'm calling Morrison. He'll want to be here within the hour. I don't know what to say to him, Elena whispered. You don't have to say anything, the Admiral replied. Just let him say thank you. That's all he's wanted for 20 years. The reception was in a different building, a massive room set up with tables and a buffet. Marcus kept his hand on his mother's elbow, guiding her through the crowd like she might disappear if he let go. Other graduates waved him over, but he just smiled and pointed to his mom. They understood. Elena felt like a fraud in her worn jacket among all these pressed uniforms and nice dresses. But every time she tried to slip away, Marcus appeared at her side. He'd become the operator he was trained to be, always aware of her position. Admiral Connolly found them by the drinks table. He's here, outside. He's nervous. He's nervous. Elena almost laughed. I tattooed his ID number on my body because I thought I killed him. Then this should be interesting. The Admiral led them toward a side door. The evening air was cool, tinged with salt from the ocean. A man stood on the pathway, facing away from them. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. Even in civilian clothes, he stood like a warrior. James, Admiral Connolly called. The man turned. His face was weathered, scarred along the left side, but his eyes were clear and sharp. Those eyes locked onto Elena, and his breath caught. You're real, he said. I was starting to think I imagined you. I thought you were dead, Elena replied. Morrison crossed the distance between them in quick strides. Up close, Elena could see the surgical scars on his neck, the slight hitch in his movement that spoke of old injuries. This was a man who'd been to the edge and crawled back. I don't remember much from that night, Morrison said. Mostly pain and noise. But I remember your voice. You kept talking to me, telling me about your son. You said he was 4 years old and he wanted to be a superhero. You said you were going to make sure I got home because your son needed to grow up in a world with heroes in it. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. She'd forgotten. God, she'd completely forgotten talking to him. You told me your son's name was Marcus, that he had your eyes and his father's stubborn streak. You said he was going to do great things someday. Morrison looked at Marcus, really seeing him for the first time. This is him? This is him, Elena whispered. Morrison snapped to attention and saluted Marcus. It's an honor to meet you, Petty Officer Reeves. Your mother is the reason I got to watch my own daughters grow up. The reason I got to walk them down the aisle. The reason I got to become a SEAL instructor and train men like you. She gave me my life back. Marcus returned the salute, tears streaming down his face. She gave me mine too. Every day, Morrison turned back to Elena. I looked for you. Every database, every record. But your paperwork was lost in the transfer, and no one could tell me your name. All I knew was you were a nurse. You had a son named Marcus, and you had my number written on your wrist in marker. I used to joke that if I ever found you, I'd offer to pay for a proper tattoo. Elena held up her wrist, showing the faded numbers. Already done. Morrison stared at the tattoo. You kept it. I thought it was a memorial. A reminder not to fail again. It's not a memorial. It's a promise. You promised me I'd go home, and you kept that promise. Even when everyone else said it was impossible. Morrison pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I've carried this for 20 years. It's a letter I wrote to you. I kept rewriting it, trying to find the right words. But there aren't right words for what you did. I was just doing my job. No, you were being a hero. And your son learned from the best. The four of them stood in the fading light, connected by threads of honor and sacrifice that span decades. Admiral Connolly cleared his throat. I think this calls for a proper celebration. Morrison, you're joining us for dinner. Wouldn't miss it, sir. They moved back inside, but Morrison caught Elena's arm gently. Can I ask you something? Why did you leave nursing? Elena's smile was sad. I thought you died. 3 days of waiting, hoping, praying, and then they told me you were gone. I poured everything into saving you, and it wasn't enough. After that, I second-guessed every decision, every treatment. I was terrified I'd kill someone else through my incompetence. Eventually, I made enough mistakes that they took my license. And I couldn't even argue because I agreed with them. You didn't kill me. You saved me. I know that now. But I've lived 20 years believing otherwise. That kind of thinking doesn't just go away. Morrison was quiet for a moment. I train SEALs now. Every class, I tell them about the nurse in Bagram who wouldn't quit. I don't tell them you thought you failed. I tell them you succeeded against impossible odds. I tell them that your refusal to give up is what the Trident is all about. You've been inspiring warriors for 2 decades, Elena, whether you knew it or not. I'm not inspiring. Look at me. I'm looking at you. I see a woman who came on a bus. She can't afford to watch her son graduate. Who got a tattoo to remember a patient she thought she lost? Who worked 3 jobs to raise a Navy SEAL? You want to know what I see? I see someone who never quit. Not on me, not on her son, and not on herself, even when she thought she had. Elena couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Inside, the reception was in full swing. Marcus introduced his mother to his training class, and Elena was overwhelmed by their respect. These warriors, these elite operators, treated her like one of their own because Morrison had been telling her story for years. As the evening wore on, Admiral Connolly approached with 2 other men in uniform. Elena, I'd like you to meet some people. This is Captain Rodriguez and Commander Chun. They work with the Navy's medical corps. I've been telling them about you. Elena felt a spike of anxiety. Sir, I don't have my license anymore. We know, Captain Rodriguez said. But we also know you kept a man alive for 6 hours using nothing but skill and determination. The Admiral tells us you've been out of nursing for 15 years. 17? Would you be interested in coming back? We have programs for nurses who need to recertify. And we're always looking for experienced medical personnel, especially those with combat experience. Elena stared at him. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You'd have to go through training, update your skills, pass all the certifications. But if Morrison's story is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it, you're exactly the kind of person we need. I'm 51 years old, and you have experience most nurses never get. Think about it. He handed her a card. Call me when you're ready. After they left, Elena stood holding the card like it might evaporate. Marcus appeared at her side. You should do it. I'm too old to start over. Mom, you saved a SEAL's life with your bare hands and sheer willpower. You raised me on nothing. You came here on a bus. You're not too old for anything. Morrison joined them, a beer in his hand. He's right. And selfishly, I'd like to know you're out there saving more lives. Seems like a waste for you not to be. Elena looked at the 2 of them, these warriors who believed in her more than she believed in herself. Then she looked at the tattoo on her wrist. 6 numbers that had meant failure for so long. What if I mess up again? Then you'll learn and get better, Marcus said. That's what you taught me. That's what you've always done. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. The reception wound down eventually. Marcus drove his mother home in his beat-up truck, Morrison following in his own vehicle. The drive to Bakersfield took hours, and Elena dozed against the window, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. When they pulled up to her apartment complex, Marcus stared at the building. It wasn't terrible, but it was clearly rough. The kind of place people live when they had no other options. Mom, you don't have to live like this. It's what I can afford. Let me help. No, you need to focus on your career. I'll figure it out. Morrison got out of his car and approached them. Before you disappear for another 20 years, I need you to have something. He handed her an envelope. Open it later. And Elena? Thank you for everything. He drove away, and Marcus walked his mother to her door. The apartment was tiny, crowded, but clean. Elena had always kept things clean. I'm really proud of you, Marcus. I'm proud of you too, Mom. And I mean that. After he left, Elena opened the envelope Morrison had given her. Inside was a check that made her gasp. It was more money than she'd seen in a decade. There was also a note in neat handwriting. This is every penny I would have paid in funeral expenses if you hadn't saved me. Plus interest. Plus a lifetime of gratitude. Use it to get your life back. You gave me mine. It's only fair. And if you don't cash it, I'll hunt you down and make you. I'm a SEAL. I can do that. James Morrison. Elena sat on her narrow bed and cried. Not the bitter tears of failure she'd shed for 20 years, but something different. Something that felt almost like hope. She looked at her wrists. 6 numbers in faded ink. But now, instead of seeing failure, she saw something else. She saw a promise kept, a life saved, a son raised, a second chance waiting. Maybe it was time to stop punishing herself for being human. Maybe it was time to remember that heroes aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who get back up. Elena picked up the card Captain Rodriguez had given her. Tomorrow, she'd make the call. Tonight, she'd just sit with the knowledge that she hadn't failed after all. That 20 years of carrying Morrison's death had been 20 years of carrying a lie. He was alive. Marcus was a SEAL. And maybe, just maybe, she could find her way back to being the person she used to be. The person who wouldn't quit. The person who'd written 6 numbers on her wrists and fought for 6 hours to keep a stranger breathing. That person was still in there. She just had to remember how to find her. The tattoo on her wrist caught the light. Not a memorial anymore. A badge of honor. A reminder that she'd saved a life when everyone said it was impossible. And if she could do that, she could do anything. That's the end of today's story, but I hope it stays with you for a while. If something in it spoke to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share your thoughts. It's your comments that keep me inspired to make the next one.